Hey everyone! Today we're going to be looking at another mechanical key switch, specifically the Gazzew Bobagum Silent Linear. This switch is designed to be a silent mechanical key switch for those who want a mechanical key switch, but maybe for more public environments like a work office or a shared space at home. Now, I have limited experience with silent switches, so I was curious to see how they would be compared to a normal loud switch, for lack of a better term. Previously, I've tried a colleague's Cherry Silent Red switches, and while they were very quiet and perfect for an office setting, I found them to be pretty mushy to type on, especially when you were bottoming out the key. Let's see if that is a similar experience with these Bobagums, or maybe they have a better implementation. I bought these switches with my own money, and I picked them up from the Canadian dealer R&D KBD. Now, Bobagums and Gazzew in general have been pretty popular recently in the mechanical keyboard community, and it's not just because Bobagum is really fun to say over and over and over again. Gazzew also makes the U4T tactile switch, which has been making a lot of waves in the community as well, and if you want to pick these up, I'd suggest checking your local mech online store to see if they might have some in stock. The Bobagums come in two variants, the 52-gram housing with a clear top and the 68-gram housing with an opaque pink top. I picked up the 52-gram variant because I was curious to see what a lighter spring would feel like, as lately I've been typing on 67-gram springs or heavier. Now, I paid $8 Canadian per 10 switches, which comes to 80 cents a switch Canadian or about 64 cents US per switch. For that price, I think the build quality of the switch is excellent. It's much better than your standard Gateron switch, which can feel quite flimsy, but it's not quite as nice as the housing on a Zeal switch or the glorious Panda, for example. There is minimal stem wobble, and out of the box the stem comes unlubed, but the spring and the bottom housing have some factory lubricant applied. Breaking open the switch, it has the standard bottom housing, spring, stem, and top housing configuration, but it's the stem which is quite different than your normal conventional switch. First off, the side rails are made of a soft rubber material, which contributes to the silence of the switch, and the solid leg of the stem has a much less pronounced nub on the end. In this shot, you can see the Bobagum stem compared with a Gateron Yellow, and you can see quite the difference between those nubs that I mentioned at the very end of the stem. Now, I wanted to try these completely stock first, so I put them into my aluminum KBDFans 60% test bench and ran a few typing tests. I also compared this to stock Gateron Yellows for a sound comparison. Here's the result. Right out of the box, I'm pretty impressed with how quiet they are compared to other linears that I have lying around. They also don't feel super mushy on the bottom out, but there is still a little bit of that. It doesn't travel as much as a normal switch due to that dampening, but I feel like this overall is a better implementation of a silent switch as compared to its Cherry counterpart. They are a bit scratchy, however, right out of the box, and you can definitely hear some leaf ping on a few of the switches. I also realized that my personal preference is definitely that of a heavier spring, because I found myself accidentally registering keystrokes by mistake on this keyboard because it was so light. But hey, let's be honest. If you're looking at buying Gazzew Bobagum Silent Linears, you're probably going to be tuning them in some way, shape, or form. So, speaking of tuning, here's how I put mine together. Firstly, I did a spring swap. I picked up some 16mm TX springs at a 70-gram weight, and I picked these up for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I wanted a heavier spring, as that's what I'm used to these days, and secondly, I wanted a longer spring to see if these would help reduce some of the mushiness that you get with any type of silent switch. I bag lubed these springs with Krytox GPL 105 oil. This is my first time working with the oil, but I like it a lot because it's way more viscous than your regular 205 grade 0, so it spreads much more evenly across all of the springs when you are bag lubing. Secondly, I lubed the stems and the housing with Krytox 205 grade 0 in the same manner as in my lube tutorial. I coated the runners and the base of the bottom housing, and then all of the sides of the stem, including the legs. I opted against filming these switches because the housing tolerance was already pretty tight, and I found that when I added a film to one of these Bobagum switches, it introduced some unwanted sound that I couldn't really pinpoint the source of. It's a bit hard to tell in the recording, but in the lubed and filmed switch, there's almost like a little occasional squeak that happens when you press down on the switch, whereas the lubed only switch doesn't have any of that. Ultimately, my goal here was to make the quietest switch possible while still retaining a nice feel and smoothness. Once I finished tuning, I put them back into the board for a test run. There will also be a couple of additional tests with different switches so you can just see how silent it is relative to some of the other switches I have in my collection. And without further ado, here are those sound tests. I have to say, I'm really pleased with how the modifications turned out. The switches are super smooth now, and the weightier spring feels more responsive and less mushy than the stock spring. I also feel like it might have gotten a touch quieter. I think if I were to buy these over again, I would have opted for the 68 gram switch, but I also enjoyed giving TX springs a try. These are definitely going to be used quite a bit for me in late night gaming sessions and maybe for when I go back to an office for work. But what do you think about silent switches? Have you given Bobagums or any other type of silent switch a try? Let me know in the comments down below. If you liked this video, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel for more keyboard and tech related content. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.